Okay, so gentlemen, it's nice to have you here today. And today we are going to talk on religion and its influence on society. Yes, so I'm going to start by making a certain observation, a personal one. I was born into a Christian family,
Mm.
personally. Grew as one, but of course I'm educated. I have grown to the point where, of course, there are certain things that I question. But when we were growing up, we were taught back then in Christianity is an issue of faith and belief. You hardly question stuff.
Mm.
But now I look at the influence of such act of not questioning, how it kind of control us, the way we think, who becomes our friend, who becomes our enemy, who becomes our lover, who becomes somebody that we would not have to even talk with,
Mm.
and who takes sides in global politics with because of certain religious things. And it's almost as if that you don't have to question things because this is how it's supposed to be or this is how
Mm.
the world have been. What is your initial take on some of these things?
Well, I think you are making a really interesting point, questioning if it's allowed to do questions when we are in a religion. I think it's interesting. We think about if when we are part of a religion and within this religion, we follow some set of rules and some set of institutions. So it is allowed to us when we are within this or that religion to make questions about it if we can even choose another religion, maybe. I think you made another interesting point commenting that you came from a Christian family. I'm also came from a Christian family, and I get myself a lot of times reproducing some mental modes or even some words that are embedded in me related with some religion aspect. Like we say a lot, my God. Even if I, for example, if I don't believe in God, I also say in my word, in my daily routine, my God, Jesus. We have a lot of even expressions in our language. Some religions, even if we don't follow a religion. So it's really interesting to think about how not just one, but how different religions shaped our societies in different ways.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. I also grew up in a church, like from a Christian family. Well, like half, um, on my mom's side, she's like an extremely serious evangelist. But on my father's side, he studied in USSR, so he's a communist, right? So I don't believe. But yeah, so I grew up in church also. And yeah, I absolutely agree that it influences much more than we really recognize, like, so you mentioned some things, your relationships, how you relate to others. I mean, for me, it influences even how you see life, your perspectives on life, and how you even interact with nature and what's around you. Because, like where I'm from, it's quite different. For example, the way how certain types of Christians, for example, relate to nature, how they interact with the ecosystem, how they use, biodiversity and that sort of thing, and how other like religions see nature and how they interact with nature. So it's very deep, I would say. Also, I don't think it's only at individual levels, because also like one thing I've noticed is that in some types of Christianity, even as a society, it kind of, how do you say, um, especially when it comes to like missionary religions that were spread through missionary in the global south. You see that there are some teachings, for example, to accept poverty, and then that God loves poverty, and that you should not worry about this world and making this world a better place, but you should only think about that you'll go to heaven as long as you believe, and then not worry about what's going on here, or trying to make a better world here. So yeah, it's definitely yeah, an influential factor, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah.
I want to connect to a point you made, right? But one thing I've noticed is that all the three of us were kind of born into a certain religious family. In the past, it would be very difficult to see people who are born into a religious family to actually sit in the open and talk about some of these questions. So it's really interesting that we can sit and talk about some of these. But I guess one could also argue that it is because for the three of us here, we are PhD candidates. We are educated. We have a certain kind of exposure. You get it? Because trust me, even this very video that we are doing, when we post it, we'll get people that will come under comment. Right?
Oh yeah.
We'll get people that will look at you in a certain way or manner, and the next day they see you at church. I still go to church, have faith in certain things because of course it's been part of me. I always tell people that one of my support system, like when I'm in trouble or those things, is to fall back on those faith. Keeps me going. As to whether, and I'm still questioning as to whether it is the being of God or it is because it has been part of my psychological mode. That is something I'm questioning. However, even if it is the being of God, which it could be, I do not think that that would be wrong. However, how we do kind of use some of these things to control ourselves and society becomes a problem, right? So
Yeah.
you had mentioned about how do you call it? Not questioning certain things. And
I think you comment about we came from different contexts, different countries, and different maybe religions, even being Christians religion, but maybe different. And we are able to talk about it. And it's really interesting because you still have around the world, for example, in Brazil, you have a lot of religious intolerance. So I think that we also should think about it and reflect about the fact of the possibility of having different religions at the same time, and that's totally fine, because when one religion says that this is the only right religion, I think that it creates an environment that comes with this kind of intolerant thoughts, like saying marginalizing some religions and saying that it's less important or it's not tolerable. Sometimes you have like people doing even aggressive things with people from other religions. You can see it in Brazil with people who have religious intolerance with African Brazilian religions. Example, the Umbanda. Umbanda in Brazil, it's sometimes attacked by people from this kind of thoughts of religious intolerance.
but you see, so the point is that this liberation we were talking about, I choose to label it as liberation because then if people start accepting the fact that there could be other existence of other religion, then the whole essence of staying in one religion would be broken down. And that is what I think that the controllers or the beneficiaries of this don't want us to know. Let's even don't go into different religions. Let's stay within Christianity, for instance. There are thousands or millions of denominations of Christian religion or different Christians, right? I am from Ghana and I can talk of multiple ones, right?
Strains, a lot of different strains.
I tell you, even in Pentecostals, my church came from the Pentecost Church of Ghana, which my church is the United Church of Ghana, which I attended. There are multiple Methodists, and they are the Catholics. They are, well, maybe Catholics are not considered Christians because they existed before Christ came as a church, but now they practice, then believe in Christ, so we could also put them as Christians. But even in this, the point I'm trying to make is that even among Christians, it's believed that one church is better than the other, or one church or one preaching.
Even like some groups may consider others that as like that they're not going to, how do you say, they're not salvation. They don't that they don't have salvation. And don't forget that these people were at war, like Catholics and Anglicans, for instance, in Europe for hundreds and hundreds of years, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about believing that the other group is wrong. It's about they fought centuries and centuries of war to dominate and exterminate each other, right? That's in the history of European medieval. So the French fought the British and the Spanish fought the... Yeah. So religion was a major part of it, even though that they are both kind of Christian.
This is very interesting because I think that in a religion environment, Jews environment, sometimes don't think about the role of even the religion that you or me are frequenting, we don't think about the role of this religion in history. What is the history of this religion?
Absolutely.
And when it was created,
how did it spread? And
how did it spread?
it?
Yeah.
And,
which
what happened to
which wars this religion or that religion was involved?
Absolutely.
I think
this is very interesting, this question. And I remember asking this question to a very good friend of mine who we are both Christians, right? And I was asking her that the essence of Christianity is to preach unity and love in Christ, right? However, and I am putting this out there, if I get a pastor or somebody who really wants to talk about this topic on this podcast, I would really be very happy about this. We are supposed to be preaching unity, love, because I think the among the commandments, the biggest one is about love, right? However, even among us as Christians, we tend to kick against ourselves. A typical example, before Christianity came to Ghana or even Africa, the African traditional religion that existed promoted, or as part of our culture, we promoted intercultural marriages. In history, the Ashantis, for instance, once went to the northern part of Ghana to bring the northerners to come and have to kind of propagate with the Ashantis so that they would kind of have different breed. You could see that intercultural marriages were very promoted in our culture, which kind of talked about the togetherness and also shown the existence of unity among this community. And we kick against this kind of religion and we bring in Christianity. Yet there is a Christian church, and I mean, this is a well-known thing. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, for instance, wouldn't allow their women to marry outside the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Jehovah's Witness would also do same and say our women could not marry outside the church. My point is, why so? Does it mean that other Christian religions or other Christian churches will go to hell? This division that we see among ourselves. So how do you move outside Christianity to go and talk to somebody whose religion was actually promoting all these intercultural marriages, and yet your own that talks about unity inside yours, there is a lot of division in there. This has been a very interesting question that I've been, I've been asking myself.
And when you talk about marriage, we enter in a huge scale and really important factor in religions, that is the gender. The gender, the set of rules, the set of rules for gender inside religion is a very important factor. Because if you see the Catholicism, who are the rulers of Catholicism? They are men. It is the man who rules the Catholicism, and it is the man who sets the rules of this institution. So it's really interesting, and I think it's a broad scale of reflection and talk. It's really complex when we enter in this deep aspect of religion, that is the gender inequality.
So the question that arises from this is, how come people get really educated and even through they get exposed, they get to know there are thousands of religions out there. There are thousands of Christianity out there, even Islam, there are different parts of them there. There are Buddhists, there are different religions out there. Yet we feel, for the lack of a better word, to use our common sense. I always say that God created us and gave us a brain, and the brain is to be used to think, right? So when a pastor says this, or when my church says, yeah, you're a lady, you're not supposed to marry outside the church, and somebody, for instance, have moved from Ghana, right, and lives in the Netherlands or lives in the UK, lives in Canada, where the person's church in Ghana was probably the Jehovah's Witness, or let's say the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which was very popular in Ghana, right? And comes to, let's say, live in the Netherlands or in the UK, and there is not a lot of members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Yet this person says that I am not going to marry until I find a Seventh-day Adventist Church member who is willing to marry me. However, in the society he finds himself, maybe less than 0.001% of the people belongs to that community, hence limiting the potential spouse. I have seen people who are based on this and they are in their 40s and never got married.
I mean, it can like I think this reminds me of, even like if you go back to the Bible, there have always been like ridiculous rules when it comes to organized religion. And if you remember, like when Jesus was teaching, like, if you see someone on the Sabbath, like on the 6th day, 7th day, is it like the day they were not supposed to work? And if you work or do anything on that day, you'll get stoned and die. That was the rule, right, of Judaism. But when Jesus came and saw, like, I think someone or some animal that needed help, and he wanted to help that animal, and they were like, "Oh no, this is Sabbath. You'll be stoned if you do this." It was a man or yeah, something like that. And yeah, they were like totally thinking and doing different things. This Jesus and those priests who said that we know the rule of God. This is what God wants, and if you don't do this, you'll be stoned. And at the end, they ended up having him crucified, right? So, like, you're not really supposed to question this. I mean, if you, according to the disorganized type of religions, you're not supposed. Even questioning the rules and what they call this, the dogma or whatever that they have, to be much more costlier. Like it could have costed you your life. At least is recently that you can say, "Oh, this is not wrong. Start my own religion. Oh, I don't like this one. I'll have my own branch of religion." That sort of freedom did not exist until very recently, right? So it was very difficult to question. That's what I'm saying. And even though there is like ridiculous rules, regulations in the name of God, people could not have questioned without serious consequences. You will be excommunicated, or you can be killed. Yeah, like even in Islam, like if you question certain things, it's very likely in some places that you may lose your life, even by your own family members, right? Yeah, if you break the rules, if you marry someone who's not a Muslim and if you are someone's daughter, your father may come for you. Like in extreme cases, of course. So this is serious. Like it's not just, there used to be like enforcement mechanisms and it's very like a protected and
So kind of
enforced. Of course it's institutionalized, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not always about truths behind the religion or in for example, in case of Christianity, it's not like the religion is not all about Jesus' teachings. It's so much more about economics and history and
it keeps the people.
yeah, people's power.
And
Like of course,
course,
like church
of
and
course.
state were the same in most places,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
Sometimes that even the church was higher than the state.
Of course.
Like in
For a
Europe, it was the
politician or
church, it
for a
was the
king,
Vatican, the church
yeah.
that appointed the kings. Or he was the one who could take down the king from.
Of course.
In different countries, imagine that.
You said something that I really don't believe, and I want to take it reflection from my point of view and my belief. You said that you believe that God created our brains and said to us how to use it. I really believe that our brain created God, and not one God, a lot of different gods and goddesses. We have in the history of humanity a lot of different creations of different gods around the world.
According to our imaginations and understanding.
About the nature factors, the nature components, and the nature
even
structure.
your environment. I was reading something like some years ago, and it was it's like a funny, interesting thing, and it was saying that it was just showing how different cultures and their gods like very resemble the people's environment and their livelihood. So people who lived around seas and depend on fishing and that sort of thing for livelihoods, usually their gods live in water or they're like associated with water. And people who lived, for example, in the Middle East and they're hunters or goat herders or something, their gods have that kind of role. They take that kind of shape, even physically. If you are a hunter-gatherer, have like that sort of god who is with a bow and that sort of things.
Yeah,
it is in a way our own understanding of what God is.
So the point was, for me, is not about whether God created our minds or we created God through our minds or as a way of course, I understand all those kind of stuff, right? So my arguments that I try to put out there is, even because I'm coming from the Christian context, right? Even as a Christian, that as I am, which believes in creation, that God created us, right? My point is, if God didn't want us to think, He wouldn't have given us a brain. I'm just taking it in the context, assuming that everything about it is the right way, right? If God didn't want us to think, He wouldn't have given us a brain in the first place, right? He would have just put the Bible in our head and we would all have the same understanding of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
But because he wanted us to use our brain to think, that is why he created the brain for us, right? So I don't have to get up in the morning and go to church, and a pastor comes to tell me that you make, let's say, $2,000, bring me $1,000 and you'll be rich. And then I'll just go and give my money without thinking and looking at it from the angle of, what if tomorrow I'm sick? What am I going to use to pay my bills? That's what I'm trying to say. So the point I was trying to make is, even within that framework, why do we fail to think even after years of education and liberation? People still fail to think. And I think both of you have touched about it. That's there were institutionalized way of trying to ensure that some of these things work over the years, right? And so it's been invited into families, it's been invited into societies, and
Education.
people are born with some of these, right? Back in Ghana, when we go to school back in the days, we'll go to assembly every morning before school starts, and we would be praying. We would either pray or we would be singing songs, and these were all Christian songs, right? So the religion was institutionalized in our education in any ways, the way you look at it, right? So it is possible how these things are built on, and so that's why I like the answers we are bringing on board. But so my point was not about how or what, but I'm just trying to question things even within the framework that we work with as Christians.
But it's also like different, right? So it's like, I see what you mean, but even the way Christianity is exercised is different from place to place, even the same type of Christianity. So the way we in Africa are taught and exercise Christianity is different from how they do it in Europe or how they used to do it in Europe, right?
Let me give you a typical example of that. So I told you my church came from the Church of Pentecost. So when I'm in some part of Ghana, when I am there, my church is not there. So I attend the Church of Pentecost. I'm a member of Pentecost. And before now, I think until recently, Pentecostal women were not allowed to wear trousers. Right? And it was claimed that trousers were for men and all those kind of, okay, let me not use the word that is coming to my head. However, when Pentecostals in Europe they are allowed to wear trousers because apparently it's too cold here that you cannot wear skirts. So you have to wear trousers. And then my question is it that the God that exists in Ghana doesn't exist in Europe? Or the God that exists in Ghana have different laws for the ones that exist in Europe?
Of course.
I have, and this is a typical example where two young ladies from my church after high school got a job as a fuel station attendant, right? And in the fuel station, for security reasons and for you to be able to run in case there is fire and those things, there is strict outfit. You need to wear trousers. The town that I came from have only one work, which is a timber company.
Okay.
And this timber company employs over 70% of the people in the area.
Okay.
So for somebody to be able to get a good job, he has to work in this timber company. And they have security stuff, things. You need to wear a fitting trouser.
Yes.
You need
for
to wear
personal security.
so that a machine would not hold you and drop you in there.
Of course.
Yet my church back then would tell people that if you wear trousers, you go to hell. So because these people could not wear trousers, they could not be employed in this church. And these people were poor.
Serious. This is serious, by the way. As much as it is silly, it is serious.
Yes, and these people were poor. I've seen it. These people were poor.
Imagine.
Someone from my family used to braid. I believe that today, if I go home because I have locks, I would not be seen as somebody that will go to heaven. But that is between anyways. There is somebody from my family who braids. We go to the same church together, and she's been braiding. This is the source of livelihood that she used to support the husband after some time. And the church managed to convince this woman that you should stop braiding because the Bible says you should not add hair to your hair or something of that sort. Now she stopped braiding, and unfortunately, the husband's work also breaks down. So there is nothing to support the husband now.
This is crazy, man.
Entire kids, their life have been in shambles because they can't pay their school fees.
And probably their pastor will also take whatever money that they have left whenever Sunday comes, This is serious.
I can't see that for sure, but of course now they are poor. And I haven't seen, I think the last time I make this point, for my entire life, I haven't seen, maybe there are such examples, I haven't seen a man that was in the church and fell or kind of broke down in life that the church have contributed to raise the man up before. And when I say man, I'm referring to human beings in total.
Yeah.
However, I have seen the church ask from poor people multiple and multiple times.
Money.
Money.
Yeah.
And sometimes it resumes to money.
And it is this same kind of practice that have made some of these people very poor.
Yeah. I can say that in Brazil, there is a lot of different strains of church. And of course, some people have really good intentions. I think that religion still have a really importance in the world from the perspective that there is a lot of different people with good intentions to help people.
Yeah.
And religion, it's a very powerful tool to conduct people. Like you can make people's change the way they live their lives with religion.
Yeah.
And we hope that people with good intention can help people to change their lives for the better. But though there is some people that use this powerful tool, the religion, the institutions, the set of rules to control people and sometimes to earn money, to earn power, to earn influence on another people and on some community. And that aspect of history, it's really important us to reflect about how the dominant religions in the world today shaped the human history in this kind of controlling people to change their lives. I think that it's really important us to reflect about it. But at the same time, I really agree that religion is still important in the world. I also reflect sometimes with me, it is possible to live in the contemporary world without any religion. It would be possible. I don't think so that would happen this.
You'll have another form of like, you reminded me some funny, it's a adult cartoon called South Park. And they had a session about this, that there are like very famous atheists that, I don't know if you follow that kind of debates, but in the US, like super famous, like Richard Dawkins, I don't know if you know him, like biologists and Sam Harris and these people. So at some point, these are like hardcore revolutionists and that sort of people. And in that movie, in the South Park, these people win and then religion goes from the world after some years. And then what happens is that these groups dominate, that the atheists, and then atheism becomes a new religion. And now they say, oh, my atheism is right, but the way your atheism is wrong. And then they have different groups and they start to fight each other. And after a couple of years, one becomes, I'm a follower of Richard Dawkins, and the other says, I'm a follower of Sam Harris. And it can get ugly.
It's a good reflection.
Yeah.
So in essence, it means that, I definitely see
even recent, I wanted also to raise another point, like in terms of how dangerous it can be. Like recently, even in the Iran war,
Yes.
like the people in power in the US, they're like quoting Bible and stuff when they're talking about the war, which is very dangerous.
It's totally related with religion.
Very dangerous. And they're saying like, this Iranian people are against the Jews is in the Bible, and we as a Christian nation have to defend Israel, that sort of thing. Even in the Gaza war, the Israelites, the president was saying like,
it's related
we should
with
destroy
religion.
them like Amalek, the Gaza and the Palestinians.
I think sometimes it resumes to who is right and trying to convince them that they're
trying to make it.
They're religion.
So recently I had a banter with somebody on the social media, and I expected a lot from the person because I know this person is very educated in one of the top universities in the world, of course, Washington University. And he made a comment, or he had posted a video, which was crazy because to me, I'm like, the moment anybody quotes religion as a reason for doing something, and this was in the context of Trump coordinating to bomb some part of Nigeria. And this is
we are saving the Christians.
And it says they were saving the Christians and I'm like, yes, nobody is saying that it is not good or nobody is saying that it's a good thing that people are killing others there. But the moment you try to turn this problem into a religious problem, it becomes a difficulty to solve in the first place, because then people take entrenched positions. But then Trump needed a reason to go in there, and the moment he said religion, nobody in Africa questioned it. You didn't see people sitting on panels to talk about why it should be an African matter, why it shouldn't be the US coming to fight about it. It should actually be something that the EU or even ECOWAS should have been the ones there fighting it. You know, yes, there's an issue there, but then why can't we resort to our own Africans, the military within ourselves to resolve such issues, but we allow a foreign power to come in and it questions the issue of territorial integrity. But nobody spoke about either of this because just for the fact that religion has been invoked and everyone went silent on it.
I think it's very contradictory to me as a person that don't follow any religion right now. I think it's really contradictory to see a person or a group of people saying the name of God to impose a war against another country or another place. It's really contradictory for the person who is using the name of a God that have in its principles to respect people, to respect another point of views. So it's totally contradictory. And these people use the name of God to do wars. It's really common to see it not just in the USA, but in other parts of the world.
I'm going to ask us to pause this conversation here and probably continue on some other day. I would have said, let's give our last end or conclusion to the conversation, just 1 minute. I think that it is obvious that it will be quite difficult for this world to exist without religion. However, for me, how it is being practiced have to be questioned. But then the whole controversy around this is the fact that religion is built on faith, right, and belief. So then if you start questioning things, then people say, you know, this. However, how can we not question things if they just don't make common sense to us? You get what I'm trying to say? So in the nutshell, it's a very difficult conversation, but then it is an important one to have.
No, definitely.
I think that the common sense is untouchable. I think it's impossible to think that we will reach a common sense. But I think that is at the same time, it's really important to respect a different point of view and to live with it. It's possible to live with some people who you don't share the same beliefs. Of course, it's possible.
It has been done. People have lived like that. Sometimes.
And I think it's totally fine to disagree with some people and to respect it, the different point of views. I think that your followers should also comment and what they think about.
All right, this was a nice session. And we'll do our next session maybe some other time on life as PhD candidates, how you navigate stuff, and we call it a day for day. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks.